have our lab number 1 for PNG 332. Because of the situation that we are in, I decided to include 3 labs for your course, and all the labs will be performed by using the PVT Lab simulator. And since you guys don't have access to the PVT Lab simulator, what I'm gonna do, I'm going to perform the lab, and then you can basically, I'll walk you through all the steps, and then you can basically take the notes and write the procedure and collect the information that we are recording here. And then I'll go over the guidelines for our lab report, and then you can follow the guideline and write the lab report. So the only difference would be, instead of you punching the keys and doing the labs, I'll do it for you, and then you can just basically follow the steps. And hopefully when we come back to the campus, you will have access to the software, and then you can also practice it by yourself. But it's not going to be that much of a difference. Okay. So before going over our lab number 1, I would like to go over the guidelines for the writing the lab report. Okay. So I already posted the guidelines for the lab reports online in your eCampus. So, and here I'm going to go over it. So the way that your lab report will be graded is based on the matrix provided for the TA as follows. So all the lab reports, they must have the title page, okay? And that has 5% of your lab report. We are required to have the cover letter or with the executive summary of the results, that 10%. Then we will have theory, concepts, and objective of experiment, that's 10%. Experimental procedure, 10%. Results and calculations, 25%. Analysis and discussions, including the possible source of errors, 25%. Conclusion, 10%. And reference, 5%. So you need to have all of these 8 titles in your lab report, okay? So what we expect from every one of these, okay? For example, if you follow your lab report, it says in the title page, I expect you to have the class number, the lab title, your name and student ID, and if you are doing in a group number, or in this case, you are going to do the lab individually, but for different temperatures. And for those, we say, for example, group 1 temperature is 75 degree Fahrenheit, group 2 is, 85 degrees. So if you are doing it on different temperatures, and those temperatures associated with different group numbers, you need to mention those, okay? Because different people, they will do the experiment on different, temperatures, okay? And then we will go over the cover letter. So that's the title page. So if you have the lab number, title of the lab, your name and your ID, and the date of experiment, you will get the 5 points. If you miss any one of these, then you will not get the full mark. For the cover letter, we expect you to have at least 4 paragraphs. So in the first paragraph, I would like you to basically describe the objective of the experiment. Basically, you are going to say, for example, today we are going to go over the single phase. We are going to study the single phase, single component phase behavior, and then that would be CO2. So the whole objective is to find the phase envelope of the CO2, basically pressure versus volume diagram, and that's the whole idea. And how we are going, so this is the first objective. So we are going to study the single phase CO2, finding the phase behavior, bubble points, and dew points. And then how we are going to do this is going to be our second paragraph. So in the second paragraph, you use to just basically describe that you have used the PVT simulator and what is this PVT simulator. So basically how you did the experiment. And then in the third paragraph, you are going to say, hey, if you could able to get the phase behavior or phase envelope of this pure component using this software or not, okay? So, and you can basically say, hey, if you could do it, and if you have done it in different temperatures, what is the general results? Like for one example, you could say, hey, for the CO2, for example, at this temperature, I could able to get the bubble point to be this value. And then at the last paragraph, you make some conclusion saying that, hey, what I have seen from the software is closely related to what I have seen in the book, or there's discrepancy, and if there's a discrepancy, what's the reason? Okay, so you need to have 4 paragraphs. First, the objective of experiment. Second, how you did the experiment. Simple in a simple word. You have used the PVD simulator. What's the basis and how you did it. And then the third paragraph, some examples of the conclusions, some examples of the results, and then finally the conclusion. And then so it becomes title page, and then the next one is a cover letter. So cover letter shouldn't be more than a page. You need to have 4 paragraphs. Just in a page. And then the next step is the theory, concept, and objective of experiment. So in the theory part, basically what you are going to do is to just describe the experiment. If you are looking at the pressure volume diagram, if you go to our lectures in chapter 2, we discussed how the pressure volume diagram of the single phase component will change as a function of temperature. So you need to put one of those schematics. You can borrow that figure from the book and then reference it in your report. And then any definition, any term that you're using in your lab report, you need to have its definition in the theory concept. For example, if you are going to find a bubble point, you need to have the bubble point definition in the theory. If you need to find a dew point, you need to have the dew point definition, vapor pressure definition, critical point definitions, two-phase envelope definition. So anything that you are using, any term that you are using in your lab report, its definition must be presented in the theory and concept. And then in the theory and concept, as I said, you are going to show what the book says about the, let's say, single phase, single component pressure volume diagram behavior. And then you go to the experimental procedure, and in the experimental procedure, you describe how you do the experiment. You don't say, I press F keyword, or I press this F2, or I press F5, and then I do this. No, you just need to describe the process. You need to say, for example, if I'm going to increase the volume and drop the pressure in intervals, then I would say, hey, I start with the pressure and temperature that the pressure and volume that the single phase is in the liquid, and then I'm going to drop the pressure by removing the mercury and increasing the volume. Step 2. And in step 3, I repeat this till the first gas bubble comes out. At this step, I record the bubble point. If I pass the bubble point, for example, I don't record that number. I come back to the previous step, and then I go with the smaller pressure drop. Okay, so you describe the steps of the work that you are doing, not pressing key 1 or key 2 is going to do this or doing that, because whoever is reading your report doesn't have the access to those softwares and those keywords to see what you are saying. So you just describe these steps. In the results and calculations, if there is any calculation, like in your lab number 3 or lab number 2, you do need to do some calculations. You show the sample calculations. If not, you just show, in this case, you just show the results. You just show the raw data that you collected, okay? If you are collecting pressure, volume, temperature, you just need to mention that. You just need to put the table saying that these are the data I collected. And then the analysis and discussion, you basically do the analysis of the graphs that you generate from the results, and then compare that to the book to see if, for example, if in the case of single component, we say bubble point pressure stays constant till we convert all the liquid to the gas and get the dew point, if this is valid or not, okay? Can you see that or not? So you're comparing this with the book. And then if there is anything that leads to discrepancy between these two, what's the reason? And generally, all these experiments, they do have some assumptions. So you need to mention what are the assumptions behind this. So the software that you are using has some assumptions, and generally performing the experiments has some assumptions. For example, the human error is always there, you assume. And the accuracy of the instruments, for example, the pressure gauge that you are using. If it has a 1 psi accuracy or 10 to the power minus 3 psi accuracy, the results could be different, okay? So you need to mention those. So you mention the source of errors, and then in the conclusion you say, hey, you could able to recover the pressure volume diagram, or you couldn't able to recover, and why. And then at the end, you put the references. If you're using your lecture notes, if you're using the book, if you're using papers, anything that you're using in your lab report, then you need to refer to that. But make sure anything that you put in your references, you need to cite it in the text. So in the text, you should say, for example, bubble point definition is this, and then you put in the bracket 1, and then 1 would be like McCain phase behavior book. You need to cite it in the text. You just don't put them right at the reference without mentioning where those references has been used. Okay, so this is posted in the eCampus. If you just follow these guidelines, you will be okay. And again, if you have any question, you can always reach me, and then I can make it clear.